gonna wake the neighbors.
Welcome to the party, pal!
Die Hard is one of the best action films ever made. It's hyperbole perhaps, but to me, it is also accurate.
That's what my captain keeps telling me.
There have been 5 films in the Die Hard franchise. We almost got a 6th, though this has been apparently canned by Disney after they took over the Fox slate, and to me, that is a good thing. As you have probably worked out from the title of this video, I want to look at what I consider led to the downfall of one of the most successful action franchises of all time. You can consider it a downward trajectory really, with the franchise, to me at least, representing the concept of diminishing returns perfectly. My ranking is easy. Start with the first, and end with the 5th. Designed as an action caper by John McTiernan, it is an astounding film. The key figure, of course, in the franchise is Bruce Willis. His everyman hero has become a beloved pop culture figure and a veritable national treasure.
Son of a bitch.
Of the first film, Willis said, "If I was going to make an action movie today and I hadn't done Die Hard, I would totally rip it off. The claustrophobic building, the good guys, the bad guys, the hostages, everybody's trapped in this building. You put John McClane in these tight little spaces, you have him kill or beat everybody else and save his wife? It is really hard to compete with that first film." And he's right, it is hard to compete with that first film. I think Alien is one of the best films ever made. Its hero, Ripley, would become an action icon in her own right across 4 films, and later there'd be prequels without her that would develop the franchise mythos further. I also am in the minority in believing that perhaps Alien would have remained a more satisfying film had it been left as a standalone story. I love Aliens and have affection for Alien 3, but the more they expanded that lore, they, for me, perhaps developed so much the mystery of that initial movie that they lessened its impact. That said, the Fast and Furious franchise, which grew from a decently made Point Break ripoff to have at least one excellent sequel in the 5th film, and has turned into a cinematic juggernaut, shows exactly why expanding a promising first film into a franchise can work so well. Die Hard for me shares aspects of both of these franchises. With Alien, it shares that hard-to-beat first film, but like Fast and Furious, it lives in a recognizable world seemingly without much mystery to ruin.
Happy trails, Hans.
Basically, as much as I hate to admit it, Die Hard made a lot of sense to build a franchise from, even if none of the sequels were ever really going to reach the heights of that original movie. Audiences agreed too, with each of the first 4 films making more and more money each time they released, and the often derided 5th still making absolute bank. The average worldwide gross for each film is $287 million, which isn't bad to say all but one were rated R.
Thanks for the advice.
I quite like a lot of Die Hard 2. Its story is a little preposterous. Even Willis has said he doesn't really like it due to it losing the claustrophobic nature of the first film, which, if you've seen the sequels, you know is kind of ironic. It's noticeably convenient too that McClane's wife and Richard Thornburg just happen to take the same plane to an airport that is taken over by sort of terrorists, but you accept the leap as it's all relatively well made.
What do I look like to you? A sitting duck.
Director Rennie Harlan did a good job of aping original director John McTiernan's style, carefully ensuring he planned his shots and edit points meticulously, to ensure, for example, they wouldn't edit from a static shot into movement or vice versa. His camera moves are precise, even if the editing does end up being a little more erratic than the original, and though it isn't as well crafted as the first one simply by virtue, I expect, of Harlan being less experienced than McTiernan, everybody across the crew and cast does an admirable job.
I've always made the choice to play him as a guy, first of all, who doesn't want to be doing what he has to do in these films.
And he's right again, that's certainly what the first film is.
No, no! Mayday, mayday. Anyone copying Channel 9?
Who's driving his car? Stevie Wonder?
He spends a lot of the original trying to get the cops to take over.
Do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza?
He wants to save his wife, and he's a smart, resourceful guy, but it takes a good long time for him to really accept that he must take control of the situation.
You made your point, let him pull back!
Thank you, Mr. Cowboy. I'll take it under advisement. Hit it again.
That's what makes him work. And to be fair to a filmmaker following the original, that is really hard to replicate over and over. Vengeance came out after a brief hiatus for the franchise. The second was rushed into production almost immediately and had a very quick turnaround. It's kind of a miracle it's as good as it is. For me, the time off worked though. Not only did it allow them to find the right story and convince John McTiernan to return, but McClane has at least had some time off from his wrong place, wrong time misfortunes. He's also separated from Holly, which may be the film's biggest flaw.
I left Holly hanging on hold.
I'll call her back.
But whilst it misses a lot of the heart of those first two films, the way they get John back into action works really well.
Is there a detective named McClane there?
After the somewhat disappointing villains of the second film, having Jeremy Irons join as Simon Gruber is a masterstroke.
He's Hans Gruber's brother.
He's not a patch on Alan Rickman's hands, of course, but who is?
See, that works. Now, where's McClane?
McClane isn't in the wrong place at the wrong time, as much as purposely tied into the plot by the villain.
They bought it.
It turns the franchise on its head, and though the twisting and reveals get a little convoluted as the film goes on, and by now it's completely lost that sense of being a contained environment the first, and to a lesser extent the second had, it works.
You know this guy Simon we're talking to? Yeah. I threw his little brother off the 32nd floor of Nakatomi Towers out in L.A.
I do like the dynamic sometimes here between Samuel L. Jackson's Zeus and Willis's McClane as well, but I think that highlights something else that started to be lost as the franchise went on.
How the Catholics do that thing? North, south, west, east.
Here is the teaser that was shot during pre-production for Die Hard 2. This is how they sold the character and film to audiences.
And one man is the only chance anyone's got.
How can the same thing happen to the same guy twice?
They hadn't shot anything when they made this. They didn't even know fully what the film would be. They did know two things. That McClane would be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they knew he would spend much of the film alone. McClane's monologues as he navigates the Nakatomi Plaza, talking himself into things, questioning his own motives.
Then you'd be dead too, asshole. Think, goddammit, think.
That's a big part of what made this character so unique. Not only is he not a meathead, but his witty lines, his self-reflection, his feeling of isolation. We hadn't seen this in a true action film hero, and rarely have since. That lifeline to Al Powell, McClane needed that. He needed a friend to get through the situation, but he never quite got it, at least not till the end of the movie. It was relatable. As the franchise decided McClane needed a partner in the flesh to get through things, as smart a move as that may have seemed, it stopped us from feeling quite as connected to the character. He wasn't telling us his story, he was telling it to them. He never seemed quite as trapped, because he often had that friend. The action too of those first two films was a little more intimate, more close quarters. There are elements of that in the third, but with such a wider canvas, the action too would become less personal and more grandiose. I think the third works as a great action flick, even if it has some flaws, but as Die Hard goes, it was in many ways the turning point that became the franchise's downfall. You see much of what I'm talking about in the fourth film, but it boils down to me that they simply didn't know what to do with the character. It's a decent enough action romp that John McClane always feels a little awkwardly forced into. As said before, Willis didn't want McClane to be a superhero, and he lamented the loss of the claustrophobic feel of the first film. When you watch Live Free though, that appears to have gone out the window. The theme of Die Hard 4 is this.
John, you're a Timex watch in a digital age. You're gonna lose.
It's a good idea. McClane being that analog figure in a digital world, it is a great place to take the character. He always was a brash but resourceful old school cop caught in complex plots that didn't fully account for someone like him. He's a fish out of water, but here he's just too far from home to ever fully feel that he takes control of the situation himself.
I know I'm not as smart as you guys with all this computer shit. But hey, I'm still alive, ain't I?
They want him to feel like that analog watch, but are clearly concerned with having him seem too out of place, not knowing enough of what's going on. So he ends up at times a bit of a sidekick, led from place to place by Justin Long's hacker character.
Hey, Mrs. Clutis.
Willis has gone from being a lone wolf, forced into a corner, having to make decisions he doesn't want to make, to moving across state lines, hunting bad guys beside someone he just doesn't really understand. There are moments we get that classic McClane alone time shtick.
All you gotta do is go pick up a kid down in Jersey, drive him down to D.C. How hard can that be, huh?
But it is rare. And since he's not personally connected to the plot by the antagonist or his family until late into the film Gabriel pulls Lucy into it, he has less agency than usual.
Now, look, I don't know this kid. And frankly, I don't give a shit. No offense.
It's not a fight for his survival. The moment he does finally speak about his family in the film, about his life, it feels forced in.
Kids don't want to talk to you. You eat a lot of meals by yourself.
We see Lucy at the start, and then later he has what amounts to a rather dour monologue. It's inelegant, as it feels like he is a passenger in this story, with beats placed throughout to remind us that yes, this is John McClane, and he's somewhat self-aware. The lack of personal moments is felt in the action too. Everything is so large scale that it often feels like he is fighting forces, not people. In the original, we saw how nobody could piss someone off like McClane.
God, that man looks really pissed. He's still alive.
But here, even if he is annoying the antagonist, the violence is less immediate. He fights traffic, a helicopter, with a car, escapes a huge gas explosion, a jet, and so on. And of course, when more person-to-person fighting does happen, it is desensitized by the PG-13 rating. McClane here feels superhuman, completely against what Willis and everyone involved with the earlier films felt the character should be. It is even commented on by Long at one point, just how much he seems capable of walking this sort of thing off.
Look at you. I'm not a doctor, but you look like you're hurt.
Yeah. Sexy, right?
No.
Come on. We don't need a doctor, we need the cops.
Which is kind of weird for a character that they do make out he's much older and out of the loop than everybody else. People remember a lot about Die Hard.
Hans. Bobby.
But there is a scene that really represents that first film for me.
You know we got a pool going on you.
What kind of odds am I getting?
You don't want to know.
Put me down for 20. I'm good for it.
McClane here is alone and scared and in pain. The room around him is broken and bloody, and so is he. This is an R-rated image, and this is a situation he doesn't want to be in, and he doesn't know what is going to happen.
I'm here, John.
Listen, man, I'm starting to get a bad feeling up here.
Perhaps in later films he believes his own ability to survive insane situations, but if so, they don't explore that enough.
Everything's gonna be alright.
Does Die Hard need blood and swearing? Willis did say of the fourth film, if you need swearing to make you happy at the movies, there are plenty of those out there. But if you want a new action movie that will rock you, go see Live Free or Die Hard.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker!
I disagree. Without McClane, Live Free or Die Hard is a well enough made, if forgettable action movie. But as Die Hard, it is sanitized. McClane's worldview brought us through these situations. His black humor came from being scared.
Freedom.
Not yet.
From the research that I did, and talking to the various officers and detectives who helped us on this, they helped me a lot, to find that kind of black humor.
And seeing the lengths he would go to protect those he loved made us like him. He is not someone you'd particularly get on with in real life, perhaps, which the later films do understand. They know why his kids don't like him.
Lucy McClane.
It's not McClane. It's Gennaro.
The thing they seem to forget is why McClane's family can't help but love him. That was the connection Bonnie Bedelia's Holly brought to the story, and why he worked so well in the first and second films. And that takes me to Jack McClane.
Shouldn't be here, John.
Or John McClane Jr., or whatever you want to call him. A Good Day to Die Hard is not John McClane's film. It is his son's. More so than even the fourth, McClane feels like he's on holiday in someone else's story. Which makes sense as he is, and he keeps yelling about it. He's not a surprise spanner in the works of someone else's nefarious plot as much as he feels like an afterthought. Perhaps I'd understand more why they felt they wanted McClane in this sub-born techno thriller if it was the McClane we know and love. The character, though, just seems so removed now from who he is that it is hard to care. He's gone from a cop who knows to do the right thing to driving over traffic and putting others in danger. He punches someone and steals his car at one point, and then forces himself into a chase. That sense that he would rather not be there is gone. The villain isn't really his villain either. Whereas the writers purposely wrote McClane more blue collar and dressed him a certain way to be a contrast to Han's more yuppie type, here the villain's standard stealing nuclear weapons plot is so far removed from who McClane is and his world that there's no connection.
Not so fast, Eddie. And
that car chase, probably the best part of the film admittedly, is just so chaotic, so haphazardly edited. The carefully constructed action of the first three films, and to a lesser extent the fourth, is gone. Director John Moore said that he wanted it to feel chaotic, choosing to shoot Saving Private Ryan stuff. He said the art of it is in making it look a little artless. Well, he achieved that. Frankly though, the action isn't really my issue here, as it just feels like any other big action film that follows the shaky quick cut style. My issue is just how far McClane has fallen. Not only has he become far less likable than that original character, but he's so far removed from what he always represented. Especially since we know now how every time he makes up with a family member, by the next film, it gets so much worse. When referring to the fourth film, Die Hard writer veteran William Wisher said John McClane is a guy who is good at his job and bad at his life. And there is a certain sadness in the character. But deeper than that, there is an inherent goodness and humility in John McClane, because he doesn't think he is a hero.
I want to help those people tonight. It's pretty goddamn useless.
Here, McClane believes he is a hero, and now is a terrible cop.
Oh, stealing, that's nice.
That inherent goodness is gone.
I'm up for the Father of the Year award.
Does it ruin the first film for me? Of course not. But has it ruined the character that came from that first film? Almost certainly. So, should there be another Die Hard? McClane, the touted prequel/sequel that would combine the titular character's contemporary story with a tale of he and Holly in the 70s, has apparently disappeared from the Fox slate, and it is unclear if Disney will revive it. The question I have is why do it? Holly has been so removed from the franchise for so long and McClane's character changed so much that what would you be exploring? I know it has its fans, but for me, Prometheus took some of the mystique from that first film, which is one of the reasons Alien worked so well. Fear of the unknown is what that film was about. Die Hard is about the everyman, without a spectacular past, pulled into a situation he doesn't want to be in. That is the point. I know the comics may have filled out his past a bit, but McClane is a cinematic hero. And it all started here, in Nakatomi Plaza. His marriage was falling apart, and it took this surprising event to bring the two of them together. How do you recreate that? The more elements you introduce overcomplicates it. Overcomplicates him. McClane is a simple man. Maybe leave him alone to an unseen simple life. The character, when he is treated well, is so good he deserves it.
Yippee-ki-yay, mother.
Thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and please check out my Patreon. See you again soon.